Now this is interesting. I'm watching GMA News, which is not unusual. I've watched them before. I've made mention before. And it's ABC. Now, what's interesting for me today is the choice of their guest. They are alerting me today on March 15th of 2022 that they, being humanity at some level, don't know who gave them agreement or authority, but at some level, they agreed to hand over my biological national security for the area that I'm in. They appointed in public service. Now, here's the thing. I did not agree my biological safety could be just handed over to anyone. There was some expectation that I would help those that are working for the lineage or the heritage family in protecting us all. That there's some quiet agreement that I don't want to be compromised, you don't want to be compromised, our kids have to be protected, whatever. So I'm going to say universally in humanity, that's kind of what I expected from humans. It's not a lot. I mean, I'll respect you, you respect me, there's boundaries, whatever. But to find out that someone in the world, now what I've experienced between Linda's life, she's never been asked to serve the public. There's apparently some civic tie into that, which nobody even mentions or talks about in this New York area. I'm in Queens. Linda was in Nassau growing up, and she's now in Queens. The word civic does not really come up in conversation ever. And then the definition of civic doesn't really come up. Today it came up on one of the other programs that I was watching for some form of intelligence. I mean, it's not direct from the intelligence community, but I've got some watered down version that I'm working off of in some conversation I was left out of. And to update them as to where and what happened to me and why I didn't show up for some position, possibility in upholding my civic duty and responsibility, which I didn't even know these things were going on. I'm just finding out about them now. There's an example that they use. It's a woman from the Bronx. They make this big thing about how she's the first colored woman and she was in public service her whole life. And then she got appointed to some nuclear arms dealer. She's an undersecretary. I don't even know what that means. Undersecretary to whom? She goes by this and she uses this, but she has a better understanding of how the interior, domestic interior of the lower 48 states works than I do. I wasn't even given the same level of opportunity or education. Somehow they made the main focus someone that looks like herself. And she said something about she comes from the Bronx. That's within walking distance from where I am. But yet I, for some reason, was completely withheld from doing public service interior work during the same time frame. However that works, and whoever's responsible for those decisions.
Turn here. Of course, it's we've been talking about women's history this month, and here you are, a woman making history, and
Even in school, in the public school, under the same flag, public service, that kind of thing, they don't even explain what the industry, what the career, what any part of the vocabulary and vernacular looks like. But I don't, for me personally, I don't know if that's part of the withholding of all the information I needed. So this way, her and I would have equal chances. She clearly was given far more opportunity than I ever was.
I talked at the beginning of the introduction that we went from the Bronx to to now one of the world's foremost experts in this area of arms control and nuclear nonproliferation and making sure weapons of mass destruction are kept safe and we're not proliferating. So you
Proliferating. Proliferating usually means making a hole in something. So making a hole in something through something. What does that exactly mean in real world terms? Because when they say it, it means absolutely nothing to me. I have more questions than I do answers. And I don't jump to conclusions when it comes to this serious of an issue.
kind of accidentally got into it, but at the same time, what would you tell a little girl that looks like you and young women coming up that maybe it's not what you planned, but to not necessarily turn your head to or the thought against, because you could have easily done that, said, hey, this is not what women like me or women do or black women do, but you stuck with it and now here you are.
And again, that's them controlling that narrative down that like really safe route for them because they've gotten away with it for so long and brainwashing people with the same script. You know, the more you say it over and over again does not make the decisions that you've made and put in motion any better for the rest of us.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, keep open opportunities. You never know what can.
There's no community buy-in at this facility for Benefactor.
What can happen. You never know where you'll find yourself. As you said, I didn't intend to work in this.
Now this is frightening. She's inside of NATO. In this photo, there's her and there's NATO. There's NATO's. Is anything kept safe? I'm just curious. Up here.
Work in this area. I knew I wanted to work in public service. That's the one thing.
Oh, now let's see. What is this? This is Twitter. And here's a table full of supporters, or that knows this is going on. Well, there looks like some support. Don't know where that support's coming from. But I'll tell you, this support that she's got over here for her nuclear arms, they're collecting blood samples in New York state and city hospitals, as well as private sector hospitals, which runs into that medical problem at racketeering and whatever, like, I don't even know, for like big law. Like there's some serious, phlebotomy, they're drawing blood and they're coming over in droves and it's really putting a damper on being able to stay biologically safe and intact for other reasons that are being compromised because now you have someone like this in charge of arms and nuclear something or other for really frightening storylines.
One thing I did want to do, which led me to working in Washington, D.C., but I totally fell into the field without really planning it or knowing it, or even having grown up with anyone in my area or in my family working on these issues. But I think the important thing is to, if you do want to find something, if you do find something you want to do, to be committed to it. I think it's very important, and I take it very seriously being in this role, being a role model for other young black women or young people of color who want to do something in this field. It's so important to see people who look like yourself in the field.
Whoa, people that look like yourself in the field. Interesting thought process.
Like yourself doing something because it gives you that feeling that I can do it too. So I feel very...
For this purpose, that is one of the most frightening Me Too movements, is that the power of what keeps me and my kids safe in this corridor of domestic 48 has somehow, at some point, been handed over to someone else without my authority, without my permission, without my children knowing about it, because we would have never allowed that. And now the Me Too movement switches into doubling down in some other format. That's frightening.
Very seriously about doing that, but I would always encourage young people of color who have often so many challenges put in front of them, to believe in yourself and believe in what you want to do.
Not only do they have, at this point, totally wiped out my parents, so now you got two generations, ability to get into public service, civic service, and find our family members and big brothers, big sisters network. But they've infiltrated and they've sent over representatives that then they've educated here and grown this really dangerous, loud, strong movement. They've mixed it in with sports networks and sports leagues, growing ever the more quietly dangerous. And really, they've like gotten a lot of airtime to just voice how powerful they are in this really like innocent looking power move and power grab. And I really don't understand why they're getting so much airtime in the state of New York. Why is somebody not pulling the plug on that form of media and rolling back the clocks in national security standards for this particular area, being that there's a White House, there is a rock wall of the founders of the nation and the profile of what they look like, along with the green paper, which has federal agreement on debt service and so on and so forth, and take care of the phlebotomy problem with collecting blood from all different samples, since they have so many biological engineers somewhere in the world, which is a really frightening thought. I'm not quite sure why this issue keeps growing and extending itself any form of time, and why it's not shut down years before it even had a chance of blossoming. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cateruzza, Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxies Broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.